strong objection. I will see if we can get that
So
set up.
are we talking about sexual harassment training or
No.
harassment people
harassing. Yes.
like people harassing us?
Yes, and making
Okay.
sure that we are not.
Is that the whole training? Just don't say anything back?
There's some other stuff.
There's other stuff too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
What?
it's the insurance company
Oh.
for the city.
Okay.
I don't remember what the letters mean, but they represent all the cities. So I think it would be a good idea for us to have that training. Everybody okay with that? We'll just schedule that for a workshop some evening. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
While we're on agenda, I have a couple of agenda items that they may take some discussion. Could I reserve space after we've done the main issue before we adjourn so that I can talk about some agenda items?
Well, we'll have to add a motion back to the agenda and then.
That would be fine as well. I just want to reserve that
Okay.
so that we can get going on this.
Okay, all right. Then make sure, guys, help me remember that somebody's going to put a motion to add something to the agenda at the end of the meeting. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the matters before the Planning Commission today will be dealt with as a public hearing. Scheduled public hearings are itemized on the agenda. I will identify the subject, announce when the public hearing is open, and request anyone interested to state their feelings regarding the matter being considered. Failure to raise an issue in person, via Zoom, or by letter to the Planning Commission precludes raising that issue at a subsequent time on appeal. If the Planning Commission decides decision is appealed, the Council may or may not allow new evidence. You may also name and address any other approval criteria you think apply to this decision. If you wish to speak for, against, or comment in any way, when I call for testimony, please identify yourself as wishing to speak. You can do this by raising your hand, physically or digitally, or typing your name in the chat box. When called to speak, give your name, address, and make your statement. The maximum time allotted for a testimony will be 3 minutes for individuals, 10 minutes for applicants and persons representing 4 or more persons, 5 minutes for applicants' rebuttal. If your testimony would be repetitious, but you would like the opportunity to appeal the decision, you must sign the hearing sign-in sheet located at the rear of the council chambers, or type your name in the chat box and let staff know, and they will type your name in the chat box. Only those who have appeared before the Planning Commission in person, via Zoom, or in writing will be allowed to speak on appeal of this item to City Council. Please note that unless there is a continuance of this hearing, if a participant so requests before the conclusion of the hearing, the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. If the record remains open, such an extension shall not be subject to the so-called 120-day limit. So I call to order the public hearing regarding Charlene Woods at 6:05 p.m. Do any of the planning commissioners wish to abstain? If none, state hearing none. Commissioner Mitchell?
None. Is this time that we give our potential conflict of interest?
Yes.
Okay, I have a potential conflict of interest because I live in the Edgewater community and I live on Fisher Road, and there is a possibility in the future that my property value might increase or might decrease, and therefore that's my potential conflict.
I have none.
None.
Commissioner Gum?
None.
I live in Montague in Edgewater on Montague, so my home, may go up or down based on value. I also have a financial stake, and my family is involved in a construction supply company that rents equipment, so it's possible in the future some of our equipment could be used on these projects.
I live in Rivermead, it's future possibilities, something may happen.
I live in Old King City, so I have none. Do any member of the Planning Commission wish to report any significant ex parte contact? Or have you visited the site? Commissioner Mitchell?
No, thank you.
No.
No. Commissioner Gotham?
No.
None.
Thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Anybody online, Ronnie? Pardon? If they have an issue, they need to raise their hand. Okay. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any individual member of the Planning Commission? Same, if anyone online, they need to raise their hand. Anything, Ronnie? Thank you. For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that if you fail to raise an issue in person, on Zoom, or by letter today or to the Planning Commission, you will be unable to raise that issue at a subsequent hearing on appeal to the City Council, or at a subsequent time on appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria that staff will describe or other criteria in the plan or land use code, which you believe would apply to the decision. Failure to specify, failure to specifically address the approval criteria that staff will describe also precludes raising the issue related to those criteria on appeal. At this time, I call staff to do their report.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. So, myself, Keith Lighten, the contract signer, has been with the city for 30 years. He's here virtually. In case there's any questions that you have that I might not be able to answer, you can also direct them to him. He's an extra resource that just the commission knows. We've been reviewing this application for a couple months now, including the pre-app, which dates back to the summer of last year. So this has been something that the city staff has been pretty involved with for a while. And I cut through the fat a little bit, just going into the code compliance portions of the staff report itself. After review, the application appears to meet all compliance requirements set forth in the CDC, including set forth the Kingston Terrace District Code. So there are 2 zones that are going to be part of this application. The annexation that took place last year in January included the properties that are part of this development. And given the geographic location of the development in relation to the Kingston Terrace Regulation Plan, the development itself is split into East Bend neighborhood in the north. If you look at the site map, it's north of Kingston Terrace Boulevard, and then the central neighborhood is south of Kingston Terrace Boulevard. The 2 neighborhoods themselves have pretty similar design standards. There's some minor differences with density, but the application meets all those requirements. If you look at the necessary utilities, there will be water lines that are being run off of Beef Bend, tying into Tigard Water. There will be sewer lines that will tie into the pump station that will also be serving the town center. So all of those utilities, including stormwater, kind of coordinated with the utility companies post-approval for land use. So the city, as you know, we don't really have a lot of utilities that we ourselves have jurisdiction over. So Tigard Water is going to be supplying the water. Clean Water Services will be doing sewer, storm, sanitary. All the utilities for like electrical and stuff, those will all have to be permitted and coordinated with the relative agencies and organizations after land use approval. When we are looking at post-approval documents, that's when we'll get final submittal of like landscaping plans, grading plans, building plans, and all of the more technical aspects of development that will be subject to further review and more scrutiny from the relative experts, engineers, and other agencies that have that decision power. We did receive some comments from agencies. So Clean Water Services, the comments are also included in the staff report, but they mostly detail permitting requirements and required that the applicant comply to their construction standards for all of their improvements. We received comments from DSL in the form of their wetland land use notification form, which essentially just stated that the applicant, upon approval, has to coordinate with the Aquatic Resource Coordinator at DSL regarding any kind of permitting or requirements.
Could you define DSL?
Department of State Lands. So Department of State Lands handles like wetlands and natural resources in the state. We received comments from Oregon Department of Transportation, ODOT, that essentially stated that they deemed that this application had no significant impact on their facilities. The primary facility relative to this would be Highway 99. So they didn't really have much to say. We also received comments from the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde, and they require cultural resource inventory be done on site. So the applicant will be required to do like an archaeological survey prior to any kind of like development activities, as well as after the cultural survey, they'll have to have an accidental discovery plan. So if they accidentally discover some sort of archaeological resource, then they have to like pause all activities, contact the tribe, and then be instructed on how to proceed. And then we also received comments from Washington County, and they kind of also just go into their permitting requirements and also how the applicant will be required to conform to the county standards for some of the roads that are county roads, like Beef Bend, and some of the intersections that will be interacting with county roads, such as 155th. Anyone have any questions?
Later.
Just a brief summary. This is 223 lots. They are single family. This development is immediately adjacent to the previously approved town center. So town center that was approved last April is just west of Elsner, south of Beef Bend. This development is just east of Elsner, south of Beef Bend. So they are a continuation. And if you look at the site plan, there's definitely congruity there. So you have Kingston Terrace Boulevard, which goes into Elsner, which has a roundabout that ties into the town center. A lot of the architectural styles are very similar. There's going to be a stormwater facility. That, again, that'll be managed by Clean Water Services. There is a lot of open space that was undevelopable for the most part due to topographic constraints along the ravine that goes into the Tualatin. That's all basically lined up along the eastern edge of the property site. So given that, one, it's topographical constraints, two, it's considered a vegetated corridor under Clean Water Services, there's not really much development within those open space sites, but there will be some mitigation that the city requires. So for their tree removal application, they are requesting the removal of, I believe, 77 trees, but they're also impacting something like 25,000 square feet. So according to the code, that would require a mitigation of trees be planted, and the applicant's proposing roughly 6,500 trees. They are going above and beyond the standards for their mitigation in that regard. Along with that kind of ties into their 4 proposed applications, which is the development plan review, which was more broad, looking at the actual design standards, circulation, the preliminary subdivision, which again will be kind of like the configuration of the lots, the Upland Wildlife HCA, so the HCA stands for Habitat Conservation Area. They are impacting some habitat conservation area with some of the linear developments and the stormwater facility and some of the other utilities in the streets. And then the Goal 5 Safe Harbor is mostly what deals with those waterways and ravines. There are 2 wetlands that will be impacted that have been called out by Department of State Lands. Those wetlands, however, are not considered locally significant according to the city's local wetland inventory, so they are not required to comply to the same strict regulatory standards. So again, that's kind of where it ties into coordination with the Department of State Lands to ensure that they're doing all that they have to do with meeting and filling wetlands. And again, like I said, all the proposed utilities are adequate to service this development. As you can see on the site plan, there is kind of a gap, which is that farmhouse that's up there on Beach Bend. We cannot say for sure what exactly is going to happen to that. The applicant has provided some shadow plats to show that what their plans are for that in the event that their plans go through and they are able to develop that parcel. So what you're seeing here, while looks mostly complete but with a gap, ultimately what the applicant is aiming for and what the city would like to see is that gap be filled, and the improvements along Beach Bend stretch all the way from Elsner to 155th. The city required the official recommendation of city staff is approval with conditions. So I've provided this commission with 3 documents. You've got the staff report, you've got the final order, but then there's this memo. So the memo kind of details the conditions of approval, but then also shows a couple small minor modifications that staff made to the conditions after publishing the staff report. They're more or less textual modifications, and then something that we added. So I can give you a brief summary of the conditions of approval. There's 52 conditions in all. I'll do them section by section. So section 1 is general conditions, and essentially requires the applicant to adhere to all of the standards and requirements that are set forth from their own consultants and from the partnership agencies, so that every step along the way must be adhered to and all requirements must be made and met. Facilities must be provided by the applicant prior to certificates of occupancy. All the conditions of approval must be met. All clean water services conditions must be met. I mentioned the requirements from the Grand Ronde, condition 10, so cultural resource inventory and inadvertent discovery plans. For the subdivision plat, so the final plat, condition 11 on page 2. The final plat shall contain lots in a configuration that's consistent with the preliminary plat. So essentially, it's called out that the final plat for this development has to be essentially what they have provided us with this application. Condition 12 is the applicant shall provide verification manager that all necessary permits and public facilities. Sure, that will be done with the applicant in coordination with myself, with the city engineer, also and the respective agencies. Condition 13 was one that the city staff required, so, required amendments to the final plat shall include: A, is moving tracks B and Y east to comply with the 330 maximum spacing requirement for access ways. So if you look at, kind of small, but if you look at the site plan on this sheet, at the top, I don't know, Ronnie, can you pull up the first page of that slideshow, because I think that shows the site plan. Cover page. Yeah, can you make that full screen? So the city code requires that access ways be provided to every 330 feet increments between streets for pedestrians. And we noticed that this alleyway, this access way right here between Willow Bend and Dew Falls did not meet that requirement. So condition 13A requires that this, there's technically two because there's an alley cutting through them, be moved over a couple spots to meet that requirement, which we're hoping is not too much of an issue for the applicant. And then we're also requesting that they modify all pedestrian and bicycle accessway easements to have a minimum width of 10 feet. And that's just the easement. That's not necessarily what's going to be on the ground. Condition 14, a final plan providing street trees. So all of the final landscaping and planting plans will be submitted to the city, and those will be reviewed by myself and city staff for final approval. There will also be some bonds, maintenance bonds that will put in place prior to approval.
Max, can I ask a question about the trees?
Sure.
Okay, will the goal be that the tree roots grow down and not up and break sidewalk? That is currently what happens to a variety of trees, including the one in front of my house.
Yes, I believe that the applicant provided proof that, they'll be required to have root barriers and planting to current standards, which should avoid that.
Okay.
We don't want to repeat Castle Oaks or Edgewater.
Almost trees. Are they wood?
Okay, condition 15.
Those trees.
That just goes more into detail about landscaping plans and how landscaping plans will all be submitted to the city for final approval, also the final grading plan. There was some concern from city staff, which is addressed here in 15C. So confirmation that adequate site distance will be provided along Dew Fall Drive. Ronnie, can you pull that site plan up? So Dew Fall Drive is this street right here, northeast, goes across. And we had some concern about lights coming south off of East Bend and turning into this elbow right here. Because of the topography, a bicycle will probably be going a little bit faster than usual. So we wanted to ensure that there's proof of adequate site distance. After bringing some of these concerns to the applicant, they added some spacing to the west of that corner to accommodate that, and then those will be further trekked later. And then condition 16 just assures that the previous conditions are met. 17 deals with signs. As far as I know, I've only seen one sign in the site plan, which was just basically just the name of the neighborhood on a wall. But any signs that are proposed at a later date will have to go through the sign permitting process and review period. Construction plans will be submitted to the city for preliminary review and also submitted to our construction consultant Claire Company. Clean water services, site development permits must all be provided or obtained prior to plat approval and recordation. This goes back to the fact that the applicant has obligations to clean water services to meet all of their requirements. Condition 20, a development agreement between the applicant and the city must be executed prior to construction of the public improvements. A development agreement is currently being negotiated between the city attorney and the attorney for the applicant, and that will be ultimately, once it's finalized, that will be adopted by the city council, again, prior to any public improvements. An improvement agreement between the applicant and the city must be executed prior to the issuance of development permits. Same thing. And then with the street and pathway improvements, which is this next section, condition 22, all street and pathways must comply with the requirements in the development code. That's already been shown in their narrative. Substantial completion of all streets. Asphalt, that will be double checked by the city engineer for assurance. 24 goes back to the curb at Dewfall and just ensures that there's enhanced safety measures on that specific corner. 25, again, readdresses the movement of the alleyway to satisfy the 330-foot pedestrian access standard, and then also, again, addresses the 8-foot. Oh, yeah, so, Mike, pull up that site plan. So these homes up here on the corner of Beef Bend and Eldner, mostly along Beef Bend, those are going to be your cottages. And as such, they're all facing within a kind of communal area with access ways that go through them. Now, the access ways were below city standards on the sides of, to meet that 330-foot requirement for the access ways for pedestrians and bicyclists. We're requiring that the width of the concrete be increased 10 feet between lots 120 and 125, which I believe are in the middle here. And then also down here on 161st, it's the same kind of configuration where you have the front of the homes facing a pedestrian corridor. And we're requesting that the pathway be expanded, right? Just again to meet that 330. Then condition 27 deals with just identifying this large block of open space in the preliminary plat that was provided to the city. It didn't have a tract identification, so we requested that the final plat show a tract identification. We also requested that it be dedicated as public access easement. The reasoning behind that is because the transportation system plan calls for a trail to go along the north edge of the river. While the city is not requiring that trail be constructed right now due to all of the elements that go into trail construction, we want to have the easement in place so that at a future date we're facilitating development. And if in the event the city is able to go in the future and get funding for that, we already have the easements in place to go on the trail. And then we have some conditions for this soft surface trail here. So this is going to be a little like a wood chip, bark chip trail. It's going to come off of this multi-use path. Currently, what's here right now is a forest, like a farm road. So it's already been, for the most part, kind of graded like this. And so they're putting this in place, but we wanted that to be also put into a separate tract. And then we're requiring at the end of the trail to have some minor improvements in the form of a split rail wooden fence, viewing bench, so you can look out onto the river. So the end of the trail is like 20 feet or so above the low water line, so it's like a nice little then, condition 31, which, as you can see, was another one that I added, just requires that a 8-foot concrete pad be constructed here on the east stormwater facility, because of the fact that naturally people will probably cut across this anyway. They're going into the street or going back home, so we just wanted to have that tank closed, so you don't have trails in the grass. Condition 32 just details that they would have to coordinate with Clean Water Services. So is condition 33, 32 for stormwater, 33 for standing. Condition 34, again, details that the applicant has to be in accordance with standard water standards. Condition 35 and 36 deal with sensitive area and wetlandification. And a lot of those open space areas and the vegetation corridors are. So coordination will have to be done with them, and then any state removal fill permit that is required by the Oregon Department of State Lands will have to be formed and approved by the Department of State. Financial assurance, condition 37, essentially will just be in the form of a bond or some other insurance that the city and the applicant negotiate. There is a time limit, so condition 38. The time limit for development will be outlined in the development agreement. And condition 39 details that the applicant has 3 years after this decision to condition 40, again, just says that all the pedestrian corridors have to adhere to the standards within the Community Development Code. 41, final building plan has to be approved through building permit process. Walls along Elsner must conform to designs put forth in the application. So the application is, the walls going along Elsner are designed in a way to kind of make it so that Elsner doesn't feel isolated. And so we're just requiring that those walls be built in that to the standard proposed. And then major modifications, if the applicant is proposing any major modifications to your decision or to their proposal, that will have to come to the Planning Commission. Minor modifications can come to city staff and city for approval. Those requirements are outlined in the Community Development Code. As mentioned, the upland habitat conservation areas are mitigation proposed adheres to the standards and to the requirements in the code. Letters of concurrence from landscape architect or metro vegetation specialists are going to be required when they submit their landscape plan to ensure that all the requirements are met and that the plants that they are proposing are in line with what metro requires and what the city would prefer. Same thing with the revegetation plans. 48, there's 5. The applicant will be required to submit to the city proof of approvals from CWS, state, federal agencies, like BSL, area. Impact mitigation of wetlands located along the project site must be completed in conformance with the application, so this applicant can't deviate from what they said that they were going to do. Condition 50 essentially says the same thing for the floodplain and drainage areas. They're not proposing any developments in the floodplain. And then the tree removal permit, again, they just have to adhere to their plans for tree removal, and tree protection measures must be provided to the city. Those are my conditions of approval for my recommendation. Now does anyone have a question?
What's the process for questions? Are they going to you, or are they going to the,
The applicant will have a chance, they have a presentation prepared.
okay, should we wait until their presentation?
If members of the commission have questions for Max about his report, this is the time to ask those questions of Max.
It depends on what your question is, I suppose.
Anybody on this side have a question for Max?
Just a kind of generic, the upland Class A and Bs, type 2. I didn't specifically see it on this. It says that the code says developments approved by the city manager. What criteria do you use to approve that?
Well, it's gonna be if they meet the standards within the code. So it's like that mitigation criteria, so the replanting of any kind of disturbance, so they have it's like a ratio. So you have a certain amount of disturbance to the habitat area, and that disturbance is X square feet, and the mitigation efforts are then by trees and shrubs. So it's pretty clear and objective in the way that it's written, so there's not really much wiggle room as far as like.
I have a question about the 10-foot sidewalk going through the, through the cottage clusters. I think the intention of the cottage clusters is to create a, semi-private, place that, and the 10-foot sidewalk would create a public place. Because, you know, when you're, you want a place where you have neighbors, community, and I think the 10-foot would be disruptive, and I think it can be, the design can be changed a little bit to fix that, but it just concerns me.
Maybe Keith, whoever Keith is, maybe we could speak
Keith,
to that.
Keith.
Keith, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Keith, did you hear Commissioner Bello's question? She's
Right.
asking about the easement and the pavement in the cottages.
Right. So the requirement for the extra width on the sidewalk is to fulfill the 330-foot spacing requirement for pedestrian access to get between places along a block. So we're asking for that increased width on one of the three pathways through the cottage clusters, so that you have one that I suppose would be a little bit more of a, if you want to call it that, public walkway between the subdivision street and Beat Bend Road. The other two would also serve that function, but they would be able to be still within, use a 5-foot sidewalk. But the city engineer was recommending that we have 10-foot easements in all cases.
I see. I see a way that it might be fixed. But I'll let you, that's for later.
Well, it is a code requirement, so we could talk about that, but it is a code requirement.
Got it. Okay.
Next, I have a quick question about plant size for replacing trees. And in our requirement, it says the minimum size for replacement trees shall be 1/2 inch caliper measured 6 inches above the ground. And I look at say you replace a 19 to 24 inch diameter tree, it requires 5 of those 1/2 inch twigs. Is that correct? It's only required to be a 1/2 inch? Where does that come from?
I believe it's required to be, that's the replacement?
Yes, it says shall be 1/2 inch caliper measured 6 inches above the ground.
What section is that?
That's on page 31 of the report. Yes. Table, it's just below table 16-11410.
Yeah. So it's a mitigation for the HCA disturbance. Again, HCA is Habitat Conservation Area. The applicant is, what you see here is there are two options So mitigation option one, which is what this table is referring to, is basically what an applicant must adhere to under a certain amount of disturbance to replace sides of the tree. So, yeah, you're correct. So a 6 to 12 inch tree in diameter requires 2 trees to replace it and 3 shrubs. While it's not a 1-to-1 ratio, that is the standard. However, with this application, the mitigation option 2 is what the applicant went with. So the mitigation option 1 would have required at most, if every tree being displaced was over 30 feet in diameter, which they're not, but just to say that they were, if that was the case, then option 1 would have required a replacement of 780 trees for the 78 trees that were taken out. But they went with option 2 based off of the amount of disturbance that they're doing, which ultimately required them to plant a little bit more than 2,500 trees. Now, I didn't write this code, but I'm assuming that the code was derived from some standard, maybe metro or regional. But I understand that it's hard to replace an old oak that's 24 or 30 inches
Like
wide
a 1 inch.
with this, with a claim.
Okay, I wanted to verify that that wasn't a mistype, typo or something. It is 1/2 inch. Is all that's required. Okay, thank you.
This is Keith Lighten again. A lot of these requirements for the HCA were modeled after what Metro expected us to have. So I think they were looking at trying to replace with quantity rather than diameter for diameter was the idea. I think primarily because it's considered an environmental area as opposed to more of an aesthetic concern that you might have some other times with removing trees.
Anybody else have a question for Matt? The applicant is ready to make their presentation. So,
Commissioners. My name is Pam Verdadero with the New Home Company. We're very thankful for the work that Max and our application, as well as our work session that we held not too long ago. I'm here with our consultant team. I think pretty much everybody that's contributed to the application is here to answer any questions that you have, along with Maureen Jackson to go through the presentation a little bit more in detail with some nice aerial shots and plans to kind of walk through the application with y'all. So we'll do that and then check in and see if you have any questions for it. Thanks, Commissioner. Great. Online.
We don't need that kind of drama this evening.
Hey, good evening. My name is Maureen Jackson. I'm an associate project manager with PCD. Just for the record, my address is 12564 Southwest Main Street in Tigard. And tonight we are seeking approval, as Max said, for a development plan review, the Kingston Terrace District Goal 5 Safe Harbor Review, an Upland Wildlife and Habitat Conservation Area Review, and a preliminary subdivision application, and this is all for the Charling Woods neighborhood. The next slide. So the Charling Woods planned development is located in the Kingston Terrace Master Plan area, which is south of East Bend Road and east of the Town Center neighborhood, as you can see here. Again, you'll note that tax lot 100 in the northern portion of the site is not included in the development. However, we have provided a conceptual shadow plan that illustrates how future redevelopment of the tax lot will provide street extensions and home construction that complies with the Kingston Terrace Master Plan and the regulating plan in the code, and will meet the density requirements. Next slide. So you can see here the site includes 2 zoning districts. North of the east-west collector is zoned the Beef Bend neighborhood, which has a minimum net density of 18 units per net acre. And full build-out of the site, including the tax lot 100, will result in a density of 19 units per net acre, providing 149 homes. And then south of the east-west collector is zoned Central neighborhood, which has a minimum net density of 10 units per net acre. And the proposed development will provide 80 homes in this area, resulting in a density of 11.9 units per net acre. So this rendering illustrates how development of Charling Woods is designed to seamlessly connect to the Town Center neighborhood and provide safe and convenient pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle access. The east-west collector, which is Kingston Terrace Boulevard, will be extended from the roundabout at Elsner Road through the neighborhood to the eastern boundary of the development. And again, the proposed development provides 223 homes and 6 lots for future development on the tax lot 100. The neighborhood is designed with highest density of homes along Beef Bend and Elsner Road, with a transition to the larger family homes in the southern portion of the development. You'll also see the image of the existing natural resource corridor, which has been integrated into the neighborhood to offer an open space amenity while minimizing impacts to that tributary. Next slide. So these images illustrate how the streets within Charling Woods have been aligned to reflect the Kingston Terrace Master Plan, the backbone street map. We have the roundabout located at Elsner and Kingston Terrace Boulevard, and the improvements to Elsner and the Beef Bend Road intersection, which will be constructed in Phase 3 of the Town Center neighborhood. The development also includes segments of the Kingston Terrace Boulevard and east-west collector and 2 neighborhood routes. Next slide. Right. The development also reflects the master plan parks and open space system diagram as shown here. So we have a linear green along Beef Bend Road. We also have trails on Elsner Road and trails and access ways through the neighborhood which offer access to the open space areas. The multi-use trail that wraps around the southern boundary of the stormwater facility will ultimately provide a connection to a community park southwest of the development. Next slide. In addition to the linear green along Beef Bend Road and the multi-use trail, Charling Woods is designed to provide a complete pedestrian and bicycle network. 6-foot wide sidewalks and a cycle track are provided along Kingston Terrace Boulevard. We have mid-block access ways and sidewalks along the streets and in between the row homes and cottage-style homes that will provide comfortable multimodal access throughout the neighborhood. Next slide. The stormwater facility in the southern portion of the site is designed to offer an open space amenity. So as you can see from the rendering, the multi-use trail wraps around the pond. It will provide areas for nature viewing. Next slide. The Charlotte Woods neighborhood will also offer approximately 14 acres of open space. There are pocket parks located in the northwest corner of the development that will provide more formal gathering spaces. And the multi-use path and improvements to the existing soft surface trail in the southern portion of the development will offer access to the natural area retained on the site. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the neighborhood will provide 223 homes. The 30 cottage-style single detached homes are located along Beef Bend, which are highlighted here. These homes range in size from 1,200 to 1,300 square feet in area, and each home has a one-car garage. Next slide. As we discussed with Max, these homes are designed to promote a pedestrian-friendly environment. The homes they front one another to create that common open space with pedestrian access. The neighborhood will provide 30 row homes. These homes are located along Elsner. These are 3-story row homes, which are approximately 1,200 to 1,600 square feet. And each of these 2- and 3-bedroom homes has a 2-car garage. The row homes are also designed to promote the multimodal access. Similar to the cottage-style homes, the primary entrances will front each other to create that convenient and comfortable pedestrian access way. Yes, thank you. We have 128 of the alley-loaded single detached homes located in the central part of the neighborhood. These 4-bedroom homes also have 2-car garages. And then with the vehicle access taken from the alley in the rear of the home, driveways are eliminated from the public streets, so the sidewalks remain unobstructed. And we also have 35 larger front-loaded homes provided as a transition between the higher density development to the natural open space. These homes are approximately 2,800 square feet, and each home has a garage. And we feel that the variety of home styles and the elevations provided in the neighborhood will create an attractive and desirable development.
For the standard lot detached homes, do people have a driveway on those?
Those are front-loaded, so they do have the driveway in the front.
Okay,
Yes.
so is that what front-loaded means?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, good.
The next slide. So development of Charlotte Woods will include improvements to Beef Bend Road. The improvements include a 10-foot wide linear green tract between the cottage-style homes, providing a buffer between the front yards and the roadway. We also have a 12-foot wide multi-use path that provides the multimodal access along Beef Bend. And a planter strip with the street trees will improve the pedestrian experience along this arterial. Full improvement of Beef Bend will occur with the build-out of River Terrace 2.0 to the north of the road. Next slide. So the primary east-west route through Charlotte Woods will be the extension of the Kingston Terrace Boulevard. The collector road has been designed to slow traffic, promote pedestrian and bicycle safety, and lessen impacts to the natural resource corridor. The road includes a 6-foot wide sidewalk and a separate cycle track. And the cycle track offers bicyclists a safe and comfortable route along the collector. And on-street parking will provide an additional buffer between the vehicle lanes and the cycle track and the sidewalk. And to minimize impacts to the natural resource corridor, a narrow street section will be utilized where the Kingston Terrace Boulevard crosses the tributary. And while the cycle track and wider sidewalks will be continued along this section, on-street parking will be eliminated.
It'll be eliminated.
Right along the tributary. And across the tributary, we are intending an open bottom culvert to be utilized. So the photos here are of a similarly designed arch culvert located along River Terrace Boulevard. So, and as you can see, the pedestrian and bicycle access is prioritized. So with the on-street parking removed. Next slide. The western section of Kingston Terrace Boulevard will connect to the roundabout being constructed with phase 3 of the town center neighborhood. The exhibit here details how the roundabout will be designed, striped, and signed for safety of the pedestrian and bicycle through traffic. The next slide. And we understand the city's concerns regarding the safety along the collector road. So to help everyone better visualize the pedestrian and bicycle experience along Kingston Terrace Boulevard, we do have a couple renderings. So this first image provides a perspective of the street from the western end facing eastward. So you can see the cycle tracks are separated from the vehicle lanes, and you can also see the wider sidewalk. The street trees, landscape strips, and the front lawns fronting the street will signal to drivers that they are entering into a residential neighborhood.
With the bike tracks, that means that there'll be no parking along that boulevard.
Well, actually, if you can go to the next slide, Ronnie, this one. So you can see here how the cycle tracks ramp up, and there's still on-street parking, but you have the cycle track and then some lawn, some grass, and then the sidewalk. So the cycle track does continue along Kingston Terrace Boulevard. And we also offer the on-street parking.
The track.
Gretchen, you can see that kind of like curves and it goes in and out. Kind of hard to tell.
So it's a continuous bicycle track, and the on-street parking actually provides that buffer between the moving cars and the bicyclists on the cycle track and the sidewalk to provide additional comfort and safety.
Is the bicycle track raised to the sidewalk level, or is it?
It is raised, those are
Okay.
ramps.
Got it, okay.
So it's elevated and separated from
Got it, yeah.
the vehicle traffic. So, and again, on this image, you can see how the street trees and the landscaping create an attractive streetscape that will encourage drivers to slow down. We also, as shown here, the intersections along the corridor will be marked for the pedestrian safety. Next slide, Ronnie.
So wait, real quick, so the pretty trees encourage people to slow down?
Yes.
Really? Huh, so making things pretty? No, that's cool. Huh. Okay.
We also have our traffic engineer here who can answer additional questions.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So Charlene Woods also includes segments of neighborhood routes, and these routes shown here, they're highlighted in green. They also include the pedestrian and bike facilities. And next slide. This exhibit illustrates the network of local streets through the neighborhood, and the streets adjacent to the open space along the southern portion of the site, they do provide parking on both sides of the street. And then next slide. Lastly, we have the exhibit showing the location and network of alleyways that serve the cottages, row homes, and alley-loaded single detached homes. And next slide.
Will there be any parking along the alleys?
Not in the alleys.
How wide are the alleys?
The previous slide, Ronnie. I believe it's 20 feet. Yes. 20 foot. 21 with the mountable curve. So the presence of the locally significant wetlands on the site requires the approval of a Goal 5 Safe Harbor review. No development impacts are proposed to the 4 significant wetlands, which are circled in red. So New Home and the design team are very sensitive to the potential impacts to the wetlands and the natural resource corridors along the Tualatin River. Last fall, our team met on site with King City staff and representative from Tualatin Riverkeepers to examine the existing conditions of the site and discuss opportunities for potential enhancement and mitigation measures. And the proposed development is set back from the resource corridor and includes improvements to the vegetated buffer. And our engineers and team of wetland scientists are here this evening to answer any technical questions you may have after our presentation. Next slide. So the site is also mapped with Upland Wildlife and Habitat Conservation Area, the HCA. Therefore, we are seeking approval of an Upland Wildlife and HCA review. Most of the site has been cleared of trees for the agricultural use. However, the historical mapping identified over 256,000 square feet or 5.5 acres of the upland habitat. So mitigation is required to offset impacts to that HCA area. And the planting plan for Charlene Woods neighborhood has been designed to exceed that mitigation requirement, as we discussed earlier. So trees will be planted in open spaces, including the stormwater pond, the vegetated buffer, and in the planter strips along the public streets. And native shrubs will be planted in the stormwater pond and vegetated wetland buffer. Next slide, Ronnie. So the development also includes extensions of public utilities. Stormwater will be collected throughout the development and directed to the stormwater pond in the southern portion of the site. And I know you all have technical questions regarding the conveyance and treatment of the stormwater. So PCD's principal engineer, Patrick Espinoza, is here tonight and happy to answer questions after the presentation. Next slide. The development also provides an additional segment of a 15-inch sanitary sewer main extended from the CWS pump station that's in the town center neighborhood. The main will extend from the roundabout at Elsner and run along Kingston Terrace Boulevard to the eastern edge of the development that will eventually extend eastward to serve the future development. And then the next slide.
Will a 15-inch be sufficient for development a long ways, or is there going to be another pump station somewhere
Patrick can help answer that question. They have done studies and also dependent on the topography, so. Last, we have the water line network. So here we show the water lines will be extended into the development from Beef Bend and Elsner Road. And water line will be constructed in Kingston Terrace Boulevard to extend eastward again to serve the future development. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much for your time, and thank you very much, Max, for the staff report. It was great working together on this project. So we do have our civil engineers, transportation, geotech engineers, and our natural resource experts here to answer your more technical, detailed questions.
Commissioner Mitchell, did you have, I'm going to just come right down the line.
Chair Boehner, how do you want to do this? I have like three different areas of questioning, and so maybe I should do one and let others speak and come back. Would that be acceptable? Okay. The first one involves the Upland HCA Wildlife Corridor requirements regarding the Fisher Road culvert that's being proposed. Based on my cursory study or look at the topography there where you're proposing the crossing, it looks like the crossing bank to bank might be in the neighborhood of 50 to 70 feet. And the depth of the tributary there might be 10 to 12 feet. With that in mind, putting in a culvert that's an arch culvert, bottomless, I'm concerned that there won't be sufficient headroom or size for wildlife to transmit through that. It'll be more like a very low tunnel. And the road width at that location is like 57 feet. So my question is regarding what sort of wildlife passage can go through that sort of a structure. And if animals like deer can't, then what's the consequence on mitigating, how do you mitigate that requirement? Thank you.
Yeah. Let me dig up some information. Okay. I'll be right there. A really good question. I'll do my best to answer that question. Again, just for good evening, commissioners. First off, my name is Patrick Espinoza. As Lee mentioned, I'm the principal civil engineer at PCDD. For the record, my address is 12564 Southwest Main Street in Tigard. And the question was regarding the arch culvert and potential wildlife passage. Just taking a really quick look and at the design on the upper end, which is probably the most constrained of our culvert. And you're right, the culvert width is approximately 40 to 50 feet. That design still has some more refinements to make. To fully hash out all the details, but we anticipate at the top end about 10 to 12 feet of clearance, and at the bottom end about 17 feet of clearance. Vertical clearance, yes.
And a 12-foot. So you're gonna raise the road up and arch it
Yes,
over?
correct,
Okay,
correct.
Right.
And the reason for that is for a couple reasons. We need adequate room on top of the culvert between the pavement to extend water services to the east. And thankfully, we're deepening the sewer enough so that we can actually bore under the tributary for our sewer extension, which allows us to raise that culvert structure even higher and provide more clearance. So I think we have a great design to provide that type of animal passageway, and I know it was one of the property owner's concerns as well, and when we were reviewing his, something that he brought up, so excellent question. And while I'm up here, do you guys mind if I just respond to maybe some confusion about the bike track question and the sewer extension? So, you guys wouldn't mind, I don't want to interrupt anybody's questions. Ronnie, do you mind pulling up the presentation again and specifically those renderings?
While he's looking, I'll tell you, my concern is I don't want to see what happened in Edgewater, where a lot of people are using the garage for storage, and they're parking one car in the driveway and a car on the street, and with cars parked on both sides of the street, you can only get one car down the street. And that's not something I'd like to see happen.
Yeah, I mean, want to respond?
Yeah, well, real quick, there's a question, I'll let Pam respond to that question. There's a question about the sewer extension and whether or not the ditch change was sized adequately. So, the portion of sewer line that we're constructing is based on CWS's sewer master plan. Anticipated to service just a little bit past 150th. And so we've worked with CWS to review the sizing of that pipe and the depth of it, and they've reviewed our plans to ensure that it's both vertically adequate and sized adequately.
CWS, that's okay.
And then real quick on the bike track, and I don't know if Ronnie can get that rendering up, but the image that was up, yeah, this image, I think there's a little bit of confusion, that's perfect. With the cycle tracks predominantly through the blocks, the cycle tracks are up on sidewalk level, away from the vehicles. As we get to the intersections, we do transition down to the street so that the bikes are crossing at vehicle level, and they're a lot more visible that way. So that's why this picture is a little bit confusing. You're seeing the ramps transitioning those bikes into the street level so they can cross.
And helpful if we could have seen a car parked.
Yeah, they're a little bit back there, parked on the side, but.
Thank you.
Answer your
Yeah.
question? Okay. So the garage style in the alley load are wide and I think. Because our plans are 10-foot ceilings on the first floor, a lot of our purchasers have volume in the garage where they can store up and against so that they can fit storage and 2 cars. And one thing I do know, with this development, you'll have one HOA to be able to enforce the condition of parking cars in the garage. As I know, water development, I think, has 2 different builders in there, so big and.
Yeah, it's a mess.
So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just would like to not see that happen again. Commissioner P3, did you have any questions?
I don't, no.
Carol?
Oh. I have, well, they're not really questions and more comments. So the cottages are like a baby because there's a particular development from the 1940s up in Northeast Portland, And, the idea is that that there are lawns and places that people can congregate, that belong to everybody, not just somebody. And so I know that this is how our code reads and everything, but I'm just disappointed that we don't have bigger common spaces. The sidewalks that go through really make the lawn and common spaces public spaces rather than semi-private. But the driveways actually dead end. And so you might talk to your landscape architect about the possibilities of creating semi-private spaces. There aren't a lot of cars that are going to be going in and out of those spaces. The Netherlands has a concept called Bloenerf, which is pedestrians rule, cars just wait, you know. But so that those spaces can be spaces for communing and working together. Yeah, because I'm noticing on the ends of the cottage clusters, if those are the front doors, they're not talking to anybody. They're just walking out. And I know in my own experience, when I have my front door across from another front door, I get to know that person. But if my doors are all like this, it's why in suburbs we don't know our neighbors, because we don't see each other as we go out our doors, out our garages. I am noticing in the rendering of the concept plan that there aren't a lot of trees in that area either, but you do have in the site plan more, some trees. I would add more. I would also pay attention to the fact that as a pedestrian is walking down Beef Bend, they have a view right into the bedrooms of these people because of the height difference. A lot of older cities, the sidewalk's down here, and then you go up to the front door so that when you look up, you're actually looking up at their ceiling. You're never really looking directly into their house. And that just drives me crazy about development in general. So anyway, I would look at just those things, you know, creating that little dead end space there that actually nobody else is going to be down there. I also had, yeah, sure.
So, the cottages that face out onto Seaford Road, those were designed kind of on purpose, so that 2.9, kind of that neighborhood feel and connectivity that way too. So there's this connectivity, you know, and, you know, in between, and then the connectivity to
Outward, yeah.
the north.
Yeah, I really,
We have to
I disagreed with Mike about that. Like, yeah, we're gonna see my neighbors across 4 lanes, right? Nope. But anyway, I disagree. I think it's very funny that you have specified a split rail fence. But I have had my dog go running down the trail and almost go down a cliff. So it's really good to have that at the end of one trail. Another thing that so I have my green building, I'm lead. I put this. A couple of years ago when we had 100-degree weather, I ran into somebody I didn't know, and she was pregnant, and she was living in one of our modern homes, but it had no air conditioning, and our homes don't have ventilation. They don't have ways of allowing air through them. They're built for air conditioning. And so I would really like to see in your home plans, talk with your architects about ways that you can at least ventilate, if not, you know, air conditioning is energy consuming, but ventilation isn't. And so we should be looking at things in that way. It's hard when you just have streets that go straight and you haven't like looked at the winds and things like that. But anyway, I really want to see some plans for 25 years down the line when we may not be air conditioning everything may be hot. We don't know what's going to happen. But most of the cities in Europe have 50 to 100-year plans. We're happy to get to our 5-year plans here. So really, really think in terms when you're building these buildings that 100 years from now still may be standing. Thank you.
Commissioner Fauci?
You? I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I have about 3 people's worth. Just a real, first of all, thank you for putting together a really thorough package. It makes a lot of work for me, but it answers a lot of questions that I don't have to ask now. Real quick one, I couldn't find this. The FEMA map noted lists a floodplain elevation, and your plans list a different, and I'm pretty sure that's FEMA using NGBD 29 datum. Your plan's using NABD 88 with the 3.6 shift, but I couldn't find that statement anywhere. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay, that answers that.
I don't know what that was.
Data, vertical data.
Adam, different definitions of where the ocean is.
Okay.
Question I've asked before, Ronnie, I'll be looking for this in the minutes. I know that the next development to the east will need to match into, its east line will match into, its west line will need to match into your west line, streets, utilities, stuff like that. But is there anything in this development, logistical or financial, other than matching up at the boundary line that will further lock in specific road alignments to the east to connect with Fisher Mills
From a logistics,
off your site?
from a logistics standpoint now.
And no financial incentive. Okay,
No,
thank you.
no financial incentive either.
Answers that one. Looking at the adjoining sites, tax lot 100, and also the properties to the south, and especially the southwest. You answered a lot of the, how does this work out, so we're not creating an orphan thing that you get 200 and some units and probably have to improve 60% of Beef Bend. That thing gets 6 units and has to improve about 40%. But it looks like I haven't looked through your shadow plans, but this looks like you have looked at this and addressed this for density or feasibility.
Yes, we have.
Okay. You people do good work. I noticed while we're on this, southwest corner, you have a pocket park, off-site pocket park right there. And so I'm kind of looking at that area and the restrictions on it, and with them having to provide the pocket park and all this. In your analysis, does that make this feasible for development, or is it more burdens than a different parcel can handle? Does that make sense?
Can we pull up the map that she kind of gives us of the city? Probably
It would be helpful to have some sort of idea of how big this pocket park is. Is it just enough for a swing set, or is it, I think you get my drift. I think that's part of your question too.
Dean, you're specifically talking about the properties the southwest
Of you guys, of you people, the southwest corner cut out.
Yes, I do.
And then also to the south, because they're gonna have major restrictions on development options.
So I can speak to that a little bit, and then maybe Patrick, you can out. So, we have, with, our engineers' help, obviously, surveyed that area quite extensively, because we have looked at that area for its designation as a park, and obviously, hoping to see if it can be served, whether it be with the, pump station or, just sewer in general and how we sewer out. And so that area to the south and southwest is quite constrained because of the natural resources. And those property owners are aware of those constraints. We've talked to them about that. I know we've had some conversations based on the plan for Kingston Terrace, that area has been designated more of a kind of a passive park, if you will. So we're kind of talking through that concept.
Okay, Sam, let's keep this up
Okay.
just a second. Also, a little bit related to that creates one space in the road where you're missing the turn, and there's another on the tax lot 100. And of course, when those develop, those will be requirements to fill those in, but we don't know when they'll develop. In the meantime, is there any issue with turnaround, emergency vehicle, dead-end situations that are gonna end up lasting longer than we think they might?
Yeah, I can answer that question. On the northern road, that dead ends, and there's a left turn that dead ends.
Yeah.
Basically where that left turn stub is, that acts as a fire turnaround, basically a hammerhead. So at that location, there'll be sufficient room for a fire truck.
Style.
Yeah, and
Sure.
it'll be, basically meets all the code provisions from the fire code. On the southernmost street, what we've done is we're required to provide vehicular access down to the bottom of our pond. So what we've done is created that vehicular access to meet the demand for also a fire truck. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So fire trucks will also be able to utilize that to come in, turn back around, and exit the property. So it'll meet all fire code and CWS code for maintenance access.
Okay, good, thank you.
That's another great question.
One more, a little bit longer. We have in the Kingston Terrace Master Plan, it talks about the issue of prior development north of Beef Bend having created problems for south of Beef Bend as far as erosion and runoff and all that additional dumped into us. You guys don't have a major issue with that, and that there's not a lot of development previously occurred north of you, but you do have a fairly major stream there, and we're waiting for a report on Clean Water Services. I base my decision on the existing ordinances, not reports that don't exist yet, that you can't be complied to, adhere to. But if you could, but developments are happening and options are being closed down. If you could talk to what you're doing to kind of in the spirit of that, to deal with erosion control. I mean, I understand the tree plantings and the habitat, but that as far as the erosion issue in your major drainage there, how you're working with that?
Sure. Another great question. So I think this predominantly relates to our stormwater management system. And just a really brief overview of what drainage is doing on our site. We've got the two tributaries, the one to the east, on the east edge. Predominantly the drainage in that tributary is coming from the north. 95% of our site drains to the southwest corner, which makes it into the tributary that's out that southwest corner. And if you've ever been out there, it's... It's varying size. It's a very deep cavern. It's been stressed out quite a bit, and we've worked with SWCA, our wetland scientists, and we've actually sat down with CWS to go through our stormwater management plan, see how it relates to what they're planning out here. So what we've done is collect all that runoff from our developed site into our detention pond. It's being designed per CWS's most stringent standard, which is the hydro modification standard. Basically cuts the smaller storm events in half, the rates in half. And what we're also proposing to do, and CWS is on board with this plan, is to outfall that water in just above the wetlands adjacent to the fault, and so basically take that runoff offline to the tributaries, take some of those flows that are stressing them currently, and redistribute them to a water system that actually can handle additional flow.
Does
that answer?
It does,
Yeah,
it does, yeah,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Commissioner Mitchell, why don't you go do your second one, then I have some questions.
Okay, thank you. On page 25 of your plan, the regulating plan, figure 161149, says it directs development in Kingston Terrace to be a bridge between the King City's transportation system plan, the Kingston Terrace master plan, and applicable regulations of the community development and zoning code. Now that regulating plan map is pretty hard to locate things on. There's no dimensions on it. Furthermore, in your in the requirements, it says that certain streets can be moved 100 feet in any direction, and other types of streets can be moved 200 feet in any direction. So what I'm leading up to is the Kingston Terrace the transportation system plan has a backbone street map that it looks like in retrospect you have moved the location of the east-west Fisher Road crossing north of where it was originally proposed by the backbone street plan. I've got a handout here that I'd like to pass out to everyone so you can follow what I'm talking about. Max, would you help? You can give, I got one for the applicant and then one for each commissioner. If you would pass those out, please.
You have one for Bonnie?
Yes, I can give him mine, yes. So the first page of your handout shows the regulating plan map. And as you can see on the map, there's no dimensions on it. And so it's on your behalf, you have to kind of guess where that's intended to be. However, on the backbone street map and the transportation system plan, it's a little more definitive. And maybe if you look at the second page, what I've done with this second page, I've overlaid in black the backbone street map on top of the terrain. Okay, and it shows, and this is not an official document. I'm just letting you know what I've done my best to duplicate. It shows that backbone street for Kingston Terrace coming south of where you're proposing and crossing a deeper, wider section. And what I think that was intended to do in their planning was to avoid removal of a house. It went south of where a house was, okay? Now the next slide, what I've done here, if you look at the red is where I've marked where that crossing would be. And your crossing is north of that in a narrower, shallower ravine. And I can understand why you want to do that. So my question is, if you look on the next one, this is the photograph you provided. And the dotted red line I drew in there where the previous Backbone Street would have been, and yours is up here. Now, without any dimensions on any of those Backbone Street maps or the regulating plan, how do you determine if you've met the 100 or 200 foot requirement, and how do you resolve the issue of potentially this homeowner right here never wanting to sell, and then the city has to use eminent domain to make that crossing? So that's sort of my question. And maybe that's a question for Max, not you, but I wanted to pose it. Thank you.
That's a great question. Actually, following the team. So you seem like you have an exhibit there that you can bring us back to where we did our exercise to make sure that we were within that. Maybe Max
I might have it in the shared document.
can talk about the fact that we did run into this problem where we wanted to try to avoid,
To answer your question on how we took all that information and got it into a real space where we can compare our road sections with, we're able to take those documents electronically, overlay them onto our CAD files, our geodetic files, and basically get them to line up to existing elements, similar to what you did, so that we can identify where the location of that intersection is. So we do have exhibits, they're not part of the record. We sat down with the city, showing that information, showing how we lined everything up to make sure that they complied with that particular piece of it. Then we worked with them to ensure that those intersections were meeting those constraints that were identified in the regulating plan. So we did work on that. We are within that 200 feet. Our crossing location and how we've extended to the east was based on a number of things. We did want to avoid directly facing home. We're kind of trying to split hairs there at the east edge. But also, if you look at this particular plan here, you can see how there's a tributary that runs straight north, and then there's this little side tributary that kind of aims out to the left there. If we were to pull that further south, maybe it's a deeper ravine, but it's also a much wider ravine because now we're having to span both of those pieces. So that was one of the regulating factors in our design on how to locate that intersection and that crossing. The other one was sewer related. So the further we go south on the ravine is, and suddenly we can't bore under the creek with our sewer, and we have to go above our culvert, because then there's the impacts on wildlife passage and the impacts on sewer not being deep enough to service the area that CWS was intending. There are several factors that we had to take into account to line that up, one of them being the regulating plan and the we had to.
Thank you. I understand all the things you have to consider. So maybe this is really a question for Max to to maybe answer would be with the regulating plan map and the transportation system plan backbone map, since there are no dimensions on where those are located, is it considered, how does the city consider the locations of those? Are those up for definition? Can they be moved? How closely does someone have to follow those before you're concerned about the 102 foot from a location that's not defined?
Mhm. So similar to how Patrick explained, when those maps were created, they were juxtaposed, electronically overlaid on top of the actual terrain. So while the measurements aren't exactly there, the general location of the intersections are. The first concepts that we were shown by PCD were not radically different, but significantly different than the final plot, the plat that they actually submitted, because we required them to hit those 200 and 100 foot allotments. So, I think one of the intersections, maybe the Kingston Terrace and Fox Bridge, is like 194 feet away, so just barely hitting that benchmark. And then we also require PCD to show how future alignments could potentially comply with the regulating plan if the roads were to continue to the east. So again, it's really just a matter of overlaying what those maps are on top of what is actually there using CAD or using any other kind of like imagery software.
Okay, so am I hearing you correctly to say that because the dimensions and the locations aren't specific, that the roads can then be looked at by future development as being approximate, and then they're not set in stone?
If I'm not mistaken, the roads have to align with the prescribed intersections. So you can't have a road, like the roads have to be from intersection to intersection.
Right.
And the intersections are what are allowed to be adjusted within the 100 or the 200 based on whether or not they're identified as intersection A or an intersection type B.
Okay, so for future development then, until the intersections toward the east are not set, then the Backbone Street location is not set, and it can be up for discussion
Yeah.
later, right?
You know, as this was pretty much illustrated, it's not practical to have definitive alignment
Okay.
without being able to go in and do investigations.
All right, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, I have a number of questions. The plan indicates you are going to fill a minor wetland, and this area is full of artesian springs, not to mention the fact that water runs downhill. That's an interesting concept. I'm very concerned now that we are having the atmospheric rivers on a regular basis, that's going to set the artesian springs off. I was living in Bradley Woods in the '96 flood. The river, and now I understand that's a once in 500 year event, but the river moved up 3 blocks from the current river location, and the manholes, obviously, Bolton couldn't drain, so the manholes couldn't drain. Our street, even though we weren't flooded, was up over the sidewalks with water coming down the hill because there had been massive Pineapple Express type storms. I want to make sure that in your stormwater plan, you have thought about the 100-year, what was a 100-year is probably a 20-year event now, et cetera. Because this land was great for raising cows, milk, all over the Portland area. So I don't know who wants to address that.
You don't want to talk about stormwater?
Yeah, no, I can speak to that. I was actually looking at our stormwater report, just before this. It's the CWS standard that they're requiring for hydro modification. It really just requires that 2-year storm event, the pre-developed, to be cut in half for us to match the 5 and 10. The problem is the orifice, the controlling factor of that controls that storm event, so small, it's really hard to release water faster after that. So, our stormwater facility actually ends up, detaining 5-year storm to 60% of pre-developed levels, the 10-year storm to about 60, 25-year storm to probably about 40 or 50%, and even the 100-year storm event is detained to about 60% of pre-developed levels. One of the other items that we have to comply with for our stormwater facility, because we have some minor wetlands that we're filling, is the federal standards slopes 5, which requires us to assess the pre-developed conditions as pre-man, so everything's forested. So the runoff, the surface runoff that site's currently seeing is a lot more extensive than what would be seen in a forested zone. That's our pre-developed condition that we have to comply with, is a forested area. So there's a lot of additional detention checkpoints that we're checking off. Finally, our outfall structure, where we discharge to the Tualatin, we'll need that to be up above the 100-year floodplain elevation as it currently is, so that there isn't a hydraulic connection through our stormwater system. So
An additional reason I raise this issue is Clean Water Services did some improvements when they widened East Bend up to 131st. Unfortunately, at that point, they just let the water just go down 131st and flood areas down the street. I think they have upped their system since then, but that was a major issue for the west side of the King City area. Bradley Woods isn't in the city, and the river, what's now West King City and the Rivermead area, is the fact that CWS was not handling stormwater properly.
I think it's regulated a lot different.
Okay, well, I'm just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the high water mark is still there?
Yeah.
It was like 14 feet in the tree, and a lot of people had waterfront property.
half a block from my house, the water was 5 feet.
You're talking 96, yeah,
Yeah.
I was around in that.
Yeah, so, and I-5 was flooded. So, obviously that's not something that's going to happen often, but we have to think about, as I said, with the change in climate, and my brother told me how the wind patterns, prevailing wind patterns have moved north 400 miles in the last 50 years, and that's why we're now getting the atmospheric river that used to go to the Bay Area. So I just want to make sure that everything that we're going to be building now will plan for 100-year, quote unquote, 100 years. It'll probably happen every 20 years.
So I have this is then just a brief question, because we were talking about it years ago. Have civils upgraded their, it used to be you looked at the last 100 years, and now it's very different than the last 100 years, because we have more intense storm event, but not as often. Same amount of rain a year. And so has that changed in your calculations just as a profession?
Well, not specifically to the most recent storm events that we've seen. It's mostly, and there is a secondary impact to benefit, for the larger storm events. But like I was talking with Commissioner Blair, it's that hydro modification standard that has been the biggest last 5 years.
Okay, that's fine.
If you're interested in, I can refer you to my brother's report. He's done a lot of research.
I'd love to see it, honestly.
Okay.
Commissioner Boehner, I have one more question, if nobody else is,
I have,
go ahead.
can I ask one more of my questions?
You bet, go ahead, I don't want to interfere, I just want to know.
No, I remember.
All right, thank you.
I'll ask one more and then I'll let you do
Okay.
your third and I'll finish up. Okay. Pocket park. What is the dimensions of the pocket park? That, you know, is it going to be, as I said, the size for a swing set and a slide, or is it going to be big enough to have some tables that could be a place where that little neighborhood would get together and have a street party or?
That's a great question. So there's two that are kind of near each other. But traditionally, like a pocket park would have a top lot that would have, age-appropriate playground equipment, and then a couple of park benches in it. And then down further, there could be like, bird or something. But there's definitely enough space for gathering, barbecue, and a picnic table.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that addresses some of what you were asking about. Okay. Okay, do your third and then I'll finish mine.
I would support your question about the pocket parks, because in Edgewater, there's a pocket park and it has a picnic table in it and no other amenities, and I've never, as many times as I've been by there, seen anybody in the neighborhood sitting out there talking or on that picnic bench. It's there, but it's not used. And so I think your question is right, that there needs to be something else that would encourage people to be there. If it's just a small space with a picnic table, it's going to sit out there, at least in my experience. By the way, this is my fourth, not my third. This is impressive. You've done a really good job and it's the most reading I've had to do since I graduated from college. But I did say in the workshop I would have a question on the traffic impact analysis, and that's what I'd like to address now. The traffic impact analysis requirement, it said it's based on the type and intensity of the proposed land use change or development and its estimated level of impact to the existing and future local regional transportation system. The Kittleston and Associates first page talks about the year 2028. That evidently is the year that your development is supposed to be completed. Is that correct?
Based on the market, it could be started or completed.
Okay. All right. And then it was proposed to analyze existing and year 2030 conditions during the weekday 10 a.m., 10 p.m. peak hours. And the analysis is based on 2023 traffic count that was done by them, I guess. Is that correct?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Chris Bramer. I'm a principal engineer with Kittleston Associates. Mailing address is 851 Southwest Avenue. That's in downtown Portland, 97204. And the engineer of record for the traffic study.
Thank you.
Yes, I can answer your question.
Let me start off by saying, yes, we started with traffic count that were completed in May of 2023. We then grew those forward to the future opening year of 2028. So we looked at how the system worked actually for existing conditions in 2024. So we took those 2023 counts and projected forward a year. That was the assessment of how things work today. And then for the year 2028, we assumed additional regional growth plus build out of 2/3 of the Paris project. You are correct that there's a citation to 2030. When we originally proposed scoping the traffic study to ODOT, the city, and the county, we go through a process where we meet with their staff and propose what we're gonna do. We originally proposed to look at 2030, which was the year the Kingston Terrace Master Plan was anticipated to build out. This one likely to build out sooner. Washington County's Department of Land Use and Transportation staff reviewed it, and they came back and asked us to focus on more near-term 2028. Reason for that is, not sure if on behalf of the county, but what I understood from the county is they don't want us to over-project needs, and in some of the situations the county's run into is they've had developments asked to put in traffic signals and things that maybe a developer wanted, but the county knew long-term they wanted, but they don't want it put in before it's needed. And so they asked us to back up and look at that year 2028. I'm gonna pause there, that was a lot of information.
No, but that is interesting, that they don't want you to look forward too far, but yet you make recommendations on the intersections and the turn lanes based on the shorter term, and those improvements would be made. And then in the long term, as traffic maybe increases because of more development, then those may not be adequate.
Not exactly, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
And so the other dimension to this is the city's transportation system plan and the county's transportation system plan. They've taken that long-term look, 20 years into the future, with the city's comprehensive plan built out, with the county's building out, with development and Tiger building out. What do they need, for example, on Beach Bend Road to make things work? So, for example, they know long-term where they want signals, and that map is defined. The question then is, okay, we know where we are today, we know where we want to be in 2030. What do we put in with development near-term to realize that ultimate? So they asked us to look at that near-term 2028, and there is a small risk that we could underestimate impacts. In this case, that's being offset somewhat because we're studying the shadow plat, where we're not even actually proposing to build it, but we're studying the impact of another 7 homes that someday will be built. So it's a judgment trade-off. It was the county's direction, and I followed it.
Okay, I understand you're caught in between. The assumptions that you made, that you said 2/3 of the recently approved Kingston Terrace Town Center would be included. And you also said that you would increase the counted 2023 traffic study by 2%, and you did that in your analysis. So I'm looking at it and I'm saying 2%, and down the road, the study is making recommendations for turn lanes and traffic control based on those assumptions, but there's really a lot of significant development going on, and it's been going on now, and it's underway by Tigard, River Terrace 1 and 2, and all the Beaverton developments west of the new high school up there, north of Shoals Ferry. And I did a rough count, and by my rough count, and just don't quote me on this, but it looks like there's like 15 to upwards of 20,000 housing units between Kingston Terrace, Tigard, River Terrace, and Beaverton that are being installed in the future. And so my concern, and I know you're following county rules, I'm just saying this sort of for the record, is that nobody's really looking at the big picture when you're looking at these individual developments that just have to show that the impact they're having doesn't impact the intersections and the traffic, but as it builds, at some point, there's a tipping point where nobody is going to be able to meet the requirements for intersections. So that's my concern, and that's why I'm making this comment. Thank you. I don't know, you're welcome to answer that if you want.
Well, first of all, I'll acknowledge it. I think it's a fair point. I guess, point that I would, just to give you a little more assurance in what we're doing, is that 2% assumption is an annual growth. So we're actually doing 2% a year, every year between 2023 and 2028. So You're getting more than 2% growth.
Okay, I didn't understand, thank you, yeah.
That's okay, but it's a much, actually bigger, it's more like a 10+% adjustment. That's, you're right, and that's where county and ODOT and everybody, believe me, they're watching this, they don't want to, from a public agency perspective, they would much rather have a private developer deliver infrastructure at a private developer's cost than state or the taxpayers getting stuck with it on the back end if we don't size it appropriately as we go.
Okay.
So the balancing act the county and agencies have to work through it. On one hand, they want to extract as much as they reasonably and appropriately should from the development that's making the impacts. At the same time, they have to be careful not to require infrastructure that isn't necessary yet. And the example I'll leave you with is a traffic signal. Very expensive piece of equipment to put in, on the order of $500,000, $500,000 to put in a traffic signal. Where a public agency that puts a signal in has to be able to demonstrate that there's enough traffic there to justify that signal. If a signal is put in prematurely and it's not accidentally warranted, or it's not warranted, there's but when you can put in a signal. There have been situations where public agencies have put in a traffic signal. That accident happened, and somebody's plaintiff attorney went back and figured out that that signal actually isn't warranted yet, and then that becomes the basis for. There's a risk management side to it. There's a maintenance ongoing for the county once that signal is delivered by a developer. Whoever owns the signal's got to maintain it, pay for electricity, do all those things. And so I'm not debating what you're doing. I'm trying to give you the perspective of it's a yes and. Yes, we want to get
I got it.
and there's a whole bunch of other stuff to it. So
Yeah.
But I appreciate your comments. They're great questions, and there is a lot of subtle information that's hard to write in a 20-page report and get all that. So I'm glad you asked, and hopefully I've answered your question.
One other clarification. There's two terms, and I want to know for my benefit which is correct. Transportation impact analysis or traffic impact analysis? They seem to be used synonymously.
They are very often used synonymously, and different agencies use that different terminology to basically mean what comes down to what does the local agency.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell, I'm going to step up and give you some information that I'm privy to. I sit on the CCI Transportation Subcommittee. That's for all the CPOs, it's the central committee that works with the, I went my pen, that works directly to the Board of Commissioners. And one of the complaints that is the county has done zero South County planning. They've planned beautifully from Cooper Mountain north. They have ignored South County. And this is a major issue that is being raised at the CCI level and will continue to be raised. There's also the issue that there's pressure from the state to minimize the number of traffic warrants for traffic signals. So there's pressure coming down to the county from the state not to put in lights. So that's just one more permutation of this whole issue.
Thank you.
Okay, are you done?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good comment. All right. I wanted to make sure that the Half Street improvement is going to go in front of lot 100, whatever the chunk that is not being developed. Am I correct?
I can speak to that. I guess the short answer is as much as we possibly can within the. So I believe what we're proposing to do is enough pavement widening to provide shoulders and 2 lanes and tapers.
But you're not going to get enough, they won't sell you the right of way to put the sidewalks in?
Well, we can't depend on it at this point.
That concerns me significantly because I walked the area, it's like 2.5 blocks from Elsner, and you hit that property line. And
Right.
that's,
Just have to be careful.
no, I'm not happy. Seems to me that that's an issue that needs to be addressed, because you're going on again, off again, on again, off again, and that's going to cause confusion, not only for cars, but for pedestrians. Okay. Now, my understanding is you're not planning to bring the bulldozers in until 27. Am I correct? Oh, no, but that's the plan. So you're planning to be a lot farther along with the town center project. Okay. My pet question. Again, I talked to you about this in the town center plan. That is for seniors and people with disabilities like me, of having some of the homes have a bedroom on the first floor, so because of the issue with stairs. Are there any plans in your structure to put first floor bedrooms in some of the houses?
Yes, so the standard, homes that are in the gold, those homes have an opportunity for a bedroom on the main, full bedroom, full bathroom.
At $800,000.
This is a lower zone, density zone.
Mhm.
The opportunity for that is not here. You have, 40 homes,
No,
but there is opportunity in King Terrace to have.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we're aware that those homes without a first floor bedroom, or at a minimum a full bathroom on the first floor or on the main floor, will not be available to people with disabilities, whether they're seniors or have other kinds of physical limitations. And that really concerns me in this day and age where the population is living a lot longer. We're going to have a lot more people who are elderly, who have more limitations. And I really hope as you continue developing, you start thinking about that for maybe 10% of your homes. That I'm deadly serious. The demographic is changing. And development needs to acknowledge that, or you're going to lose a big chunk of the population purchasing your homes. It's a pet peeve, before I became disabled myself, I really wasn't aware.
And that was my comment too, is before I became disabled, I had no clue. I'm getting more surgery on my ankle. Yeah.
Anyway, those were my questions. If no one has any questions, we are ready for public testimony. First, I would call for anyone who wants to speak in favor of the application. What you need to do is please state your name and address for the record. Anybody want to testify in favor of the application? Favor of the application. That is in the neutral. Anybody online, Ronnie? Folks online, you need to raise your hand, your computer hand, so that Ronnie can see it. You're not pro or con. Okay. Is there anyone who wants to testify in opposition to the project? Same thing for the online folks. Okay. Okay, now we're going to the neutral. And this lady raised her hand first. Okay, no, come on up. No. You spoke up before this gentleman. And you'll need to give, your name and address.
I am Sue Harvey, and we live at 15540 Southwest Beach Bend Road, just to the east of this property that you're talking about.
And you had a slide, I don't know how easy it is to pull it up, it's transportation infrastructure, private alleys.
We just have a concern, our driveway, goes up to Beast Bend Road. If you look in, yeah, that's not the best, it's.
So you're
It's
just,
Transportation infrastructure, private alleys.
The ones that highlight, down, you were just about there.
Are you close to 155th?
Well, yes, that's our driveway.
Okay.
That's our question. All right?
Okay.
Yeah. So our driveway,
Runs right where it appears on here would be 155th. And so, my question is that my husband is a farmer, and we don't want to be blocked off on Beast Bend Road. I mean, he brings tractors and plows and combines and push us into a residential area, but that doesn't make any sense. So, we're concerned about losing our access to.
well, I'm going to have to ask these folks to respond because I don't have a clue.
Yes. So that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. We actually were asked to provide, interim improvement plan for that access, because that is your access currently. And we did provide that to, Maximum. Any of that's something shared at this point in time, but we were asked to provide an interim plan until that road is improved, so that these folks would have access to their property through that process.
Well, I'm thinking that we should not lose access to Beast Bend Road. That's my thought.
You won't lose access.
Does that mean you might be parking in the driveway?
So I guess the question is, that is an access easement, it's not a, exclusive easement, but it is your way in and way out.
It's our only way.
So, so the idea is to provide an alternate access while that improvement is being.
But then if that improvement was made, then wouldn't that remove our access to without having to go onto some other street before we got to the.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying.
Because my concern would be, let's say you could put it down that little knob down there, right? Then he's driving a combine onto a small residential street just to get out to Beast Bend Road. That's really not acceptable. It doesn't benefit us to lose direct access to Beast Bend Road. Very concerned.
I think that there would be an opportunity for us to work with you on looking at your property.
I guess maybe I just wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence about going on the record. Because what I heard at the beginning is like, if you didn't speak up.
Yeah.
So,
No,
since I'm speaking up.
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I think you can work something out.
We put that as like an.
Yes, I think that should be a condition.
There has to be a neighbor for access to be sent, does that sound like?
For farm equipment, specifically for farm equipment. Is that sufficiently detailed if I say farm equipment?
Can you tell us how wide that road is right now? top of my head, I believe it's
Ronnie, go up a slide.
One more, 30, 20.
Now, let's add one more condition. I'm sure you guys can, because we want them to be able to get in and out reasonably.
38 feet, including bike lane.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. No. Absolutely. That's why we have these hearings and let people know. Okay, you had a comment. Come on up.
My name is Greg Russell. I'm at 14100 Southwest River Lane in Rivermead. And I just have a couple comments I would like to ask a number of you here. One, there's a wetland A and F is identified as not locally significant, okay? My concern is any wetland to be filled would have an impact on the Tualatin River. And I wanted to know what criteria is being used to make that decision. Also, there's also an unnamed tributary to the Tualatin River, and that land is labeled as marginal condition, which is 5.5 acres. So my question is, plan on to enhance that to good condition? And what exactly does that mean, and who's making that decision? And my other question is, have you communicated with the tree keepers of Washington County to get their perspective on what trees to be taken down? I'm a little confused because 77 trees are being taken down, like an oak or aspen or Douglas fir. Is that being replaced by the same species? And the question was brought up earlier, 1/2 inch diameter as a replacement for a stick for a tree, just ridiculous. My comments. Do you have any answers to those? I certainly would like to.
Did you say 1/2 inch?
No, 1.5 inches.
No.
No, it said half, it said a 1/2 inch. That was my previous comment.
It's 1.5 inches. It's a misprint. It's a typo.
That's why you asked for it.
That's why I asked the question. It says 1/2 inch caliper.
Oh, I thought you said 1.5 inches.
No, it says 1/2.
Typo.
Yeah, that can't be right.
Should be
The
3
standard
inches.
for street trees, 2 inches. So it wouldn't go
Okay,
up.
that's what I wanted to
1/2
clarify.
inches, like a foot.
It's twig.
Yeah.
My yard in half.
No, it's definitely not.
So our community development code needs to be,
Scrivener's there then, yeah.
yeah, that needs to be corrected.
And to
Thank you.
Greg's point, that's obviously insufficient. We're not trying to replace an oak with a twig. But even 1.5 inches is not.
Hi, my name is Bill Hall. I'm with SWCA. My mailing address is 1800 Northwest Oxford Street in Portland, Oregon, 97209. I can answer the questions about the wetland work. Wetland A and F are not locally significant because those are the right size for how local wetland inventory defines. What is size? I believe a locally significant wetland has to be over 1/2 acre and of good quality. So those go through the state of Oregon wetland delineation, the local wetland inventory criteria process for locally significant. So those that just do not meet the size or the high quality wetland. Can you speak up, please? Sorry, I can't hear you. So that's that criteria. The other criteria is between degraded and marginal. We use the Clean Water Services standards, which has been around for 25, 30 years. And there are certain criteria for type of cover, canopy cover, species, whether they're invasive, whether they're native, what size they are. What do we go through? So Clean Water Services signs off on that, we are clear, and we have a monitoring plan that goes with that, and answer your question? Not really.
They just seem to be more in-depth to it. I mean, marginals are good, you know, the areas going into Tualatin and River. I mean, a wetland, for example, was there naturally, you know, and
Actually, wetland A is not. Wetland A is probably a cracked tile. This area has a lot of drainage tiles that come down through it, and wetland A is likely cracked from those tiles, you know, an artificial hydrologic source for that. That is why it does not get a high quality one, because there's currently a farm road through it, with not a lot of vegetation. But that buffer is obviously just based on those criteria. We do have, I believe, in the report, and I can share the report with you, how we came to that conclusion that we've put off to Clean Water Services for these. Any questions? Sorry, were you able to hear all that?
There was did you want to ask a question? Name and address.
Harvey, 15540 Southwest East End Road. Had a question, the new community, will that be King City, Oregon, or Tigard, Oregon, or?
King City.
It will, so there'll be a new, will that, I live to the east and in the rural area, will that, my address become King City?
No, you haven't applied or been annexed into the city yet, but this property has been annexed into the city.
If you choose annex, then
Oh, once it's annexed,
You become,
okay.
like, you would, in all likelihood, need to sign off, and,
Right.
yeah, we're not trying to enforce anything.
Okay, I was just curious.
and it takes a while for the post office to.
The other concern, 155th, never heard of it until. It's coming straight down off of, East Bend, and it goes into the, development, but, according to the pink line on that map, this goes right south, which goes kind of in canyons and stuff, so. The part that is, south of the development road, is that just kind of unknown at the moment, or fine for the future? Yeah.
When it kind of curves to the
Well, I didn't see a curve in it, that one map that showed the eastern boundary. Well, I guess it curves into the
development.
So south of that, it goes down to another connector road there,
all the space that you see that isn't occupied by homes, that will remain open space.
Oh, okay.
That's part of the Clean Water Services vegetated corridor,
Mhm.
and that's where the ravine runs through currently.
So for the beginning, 155th, it would only more or less come down to where it meets that, whatever the name of that road is there. Yeah, okay. All right, and then, of course, my wife mentioned our concern is our access.
Yeah.
And we'll,
That's absolutely,
okay.
we are adding it as a condition. And in partial response to your comments, that's why I raised the issue of the Artesian Springs, because a lot of what causes the runoff has to do with that particular condition.
I'm glad that you.
Okay, are there any other questions? And there wasn't anybody online, correct? Okay. Well, then I'm going to close the public hearing. And it's time for the applicant rebuttal. Do you want to make any further comments with respect to the testimony? You're good? Okay. Anything further from staff? Okay,
Other than just to be clear, that the planning commission will be, conditions that we went over before will have to be amended regardless of how you vote, because the recommendation will be slightly to include the new condition that has been determined.
I guess I have to have a motion to close the public hearing, so will somebody?
May I ask just one more clarification before you do that? I forgot about one issue, and that is the climate-friendly and equitable communities ordinance that was just recently passed. Does that apply to this or future?
That doesn't apply to this.
Okay.
Because this application was deemed complete, in which case, before we adopted that ordinance, so it was kind of like grandfathered in.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to end the public hearing?
Second it.
All in favor, just raise your hand.
Yes.
Okay. Now, it's time for us to have a motion to approve or not approve the application. And there are 4 different motions that are part of this. It's development plan review, the pulmonary subdivision review, the upland wildlife HCA, the Goal 5 safe harbor. I will ask to do the tree permit separately because it's really totally different. So is there anyone make a motion to approve, or
I make a motion to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now, discussion.
Are we approving all 5 of the things you just said, or
4 things.
4 things? So not individually, as a package?
Yes, it's a lot easier.
Part of-
Whether or not to approve with conditions.
Yeah, with the conditions, yes. Including the most recent condition regarding the,
To be added condition.
right.
for your-
I think we're all clear on what that is. Pardon? The motion is to approve the development plan review, preliminary subdivision review, the upland wildlife HCA, and the Goal 5 safe harbor review with conditions, and the additional one that was mentioned during the testimony. Okay, discussion.
Yes, I would.
1 second.
Yes,
I did.
Nicola?
Yes, I would like to say thank you for this the development proposal for Charlene Woods. Pacific Community Design is you've overwhelmed probably a lot of us with what you've put together. It looks like it's going to be a very good community, and I commend you for all the work. It's an eye-opener to me. This is the first time I've seen one of these, and I didn't realize everything that goes in to developing a community. It's very impressive, and thank you for your hard work.
I have to concur with the counselor's comments on that, and my concern was always about the water, and there is so much information about how you're going to handle the water that's moving through this development, and taking in the concerns that we've had in the past with what's coming down across the road. So I am so thrilled and so excited about all the work that has been done putting this together. And I think it seems to be a really well thought out plan. So congratulations.
I get to say something?
It's discussion time.
Sure. No, yeah.
Okay, if there are no further comments, by the way, I'm a retired land use lawyer, so I ask a lot of questions, so. With that, I'll call for a roll call vote.
On the far end.
In second?
No, we had the motion second.
Okay, so,
No, he's,
we have a roll call vote to vote on to approve the development application proposal with conditions.
all the conditions.
All conditions. Gothier, approved. Commissioner Nicolai. Commissioner Blair. Commissioner Bellows.
Approved.
Petrie.
Approved.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Approved.
Chair Boehner.
Yes.
7-0, unanimous approval with conditions.
Thank you so much. All of your hard work. I really do appreciate it. Okay, we've had a request to add an item to the agenda, from Commissioner, Blair, and we need to have a motion to,
We need to approve the tree plan.
oh, I am so sorry. I'm sorry. We need to have a motion to approve the tree removal
Okay.
permit.
Motion to approve tree removal permit
That also has some, I mean, the conditions are.
with conditions.
Right, so Nicolai moves.
Second, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second,
Do
I
we
can,
need any discussion?
Yes, yeah, I just have a question. Why is that have to be a separate approval?
so the applicant didn't explicitly request this application in their proposal, but it's just logistically makes sense to put it in there anyway from our perspective, and they provided all the materials to do an adequate review for it. So it just makes, they're two separate things.
Okay,
In all the commissions that I've been on, it's always been handled separately. Okay, if there's no discussion, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Gothier,
Approved.
Nicolai,
Approve.
Blair,
Approved.
Commissioner Bellows,
Approved?
Petrie,
Approved.
Mitchell,
approved?
Chair Boehner.
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
And then just before we get to this next part of the agenda, these guys are all good to go, right?
Yeah. Thank you. And Pam, because I want to talk to you about another project. I mean, have lunch. Yeah.
I want to give you the address of this old development that works.
Drive carefully, folks. It's probably already below freezing, below 32. Well, and they're driving into town.
Have a couple things about it's not gonna be.
It's out here.
I must be a lot lower, because I'm 39.
Probably not.
It's generic, it came fitting, so it could be anywhere.
I know.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing is the workshop, do you guys?
We're doing a workshop, yes. I already talked to Max about that.
Official tonight?
Yeah.
Workshop in 2 weeks.
Calendars, so I can.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to have a workshop on the second Wednesday of February.
That's the one?
No,
So like a logistics.
So that's the 12th.
second Wednesday is, I'm not looking. We've got another development, we've got the fire station, and also, maybe that would be more appropriate to do your items on that agenda.
Let's make this decision tonight
Okay,
and just put it on that. I'm fine with that.
yeah. Okay, well, what are your agenda items?
Okay, so,
Title, sort of. So that Ross got it.
agenda item 1, planning commission procedures. We approved in our December meeting, to have planning commission procedures as an agenda item on our January 8th meeting, but it didn't show up on the agenda. And I sent information and was told, or, apology, we'll put it on the January 22nd meeting. Again, it hasn't happened.
Okay. Ronnie,
This is,
it's on the agenda.
It is on the agenda now.
so it is on the agenda for the Wednesday, for the second Wednesday meeting in February. Okay, in addition, and I'm gonna pass this out because I want people to have a chance to look at this, and I think it's important.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're
You're
very welcome.
You're looking fine today, Mr. President.
Oh, well, thank you.
Okay, we will take a look at this.
I can go over it.
I think we can all read it.
Okay. And you really only have, the important point is everything up to just about the end of the first page. That's the essence of it.
And I'm aware of that problem. I'll just tell you, the failed culvert under East Bend Road that, Clean Water Services has ignored, despite me bringing it up to them at least 4 different times.
Since it'll be my responsibility likely to try to get Clean Water Services to come, can you give me like a directive? What exactly am I asking them?
Okay, for point.
Okay.
Motion, second, to do the workshop in the second February, or
February 12th.
February 12th, and then to add all these items to the agenda, including the workshop for, are we doing anything with the other applications or anything?
That's up to you, so.
The fire department is going to come in a brief presentation,
Okay.
The workshop?
workshop, brief.
Are they? I have to work with.
Fire station.
Okay. I haven't scheduled anything yet.
Oh, dear.
I can request them to come.
Yeah,
It might not be the fire department though, it might be like their contractor.
no, that's fine. It's just, I want to make sure that if there are going to be any questions, we can prepare them.
And what time?
6 o'clock. And then we'll do the fire thing first.
And then we'll do. Don't know if we have enough time to get this Clean Water Services in February. Maybe we'll try.
What's the date in February?
12th.
12.
And then we'll have a hearing on the new fire station on the, whatever the 4th Wednesday is.
So if I can get a motion second, and
For having a meeting on the 12th.
So I make a motion, we have a workshop meeting on February 12th.
Second.
That, I'm not done.
No, not done, okay.
yeah, there's a couple.
Easy, boy. That it include,
Include the
Training.
the harassment training,
No, this is the procedures training.
procedures training,
the fire department, and then the Clean Water Services.
Yeah.
Item that you would like to talk about.
yes.
When is the harassment training?
That hasn't been scheduled. I was just, I think this is something.
A motion.
Gotcha.
Can I get a second?
Harassment training cover?
I second.
Wait,
Yes.
Fireman moves and Commissioner Mitchell seconds to have a workshop on February 12th at 6 o'clock and invite a representative from Clean Water Services to discuss
And if they can't come,
mailing systems and retrofitting and what their plans are for their master plan in the Bull Mountain runoff area. And TVFNR for their
and we'll do them first.
their reconstruction of the fire system. Which in 1 month is when I am planning on having that hearing.
Yeah.
So the fourth to Wednesday in February, and we will be meeting again for a hearing. That will not be quite as,
That will, not sure.
that'll be one building.
And if,
They are requesting a bunch of
and
variances.
if Clean Water Services can't come, we move it to March?
I'll talk to my contact, my counterpart at Clean Water Services, and ask him what his availability or who their public representative is. I know last year around this time of year, they held an open house when they were doing their development of the regional stormwater system. And I mean, I went there and Mike went there. There was like 5 people for like 3 hours. But there was like 6 Clean Water Services people, and they had all their different stuff up, and so I could also request to see if they are planning on holding another one, and invite you guys to that, but certainly.
really,
This is localized.
this is more, what's going on with the report, because like it happens.
That's stuff that's going on right now.
We all said development was gonna come from the west to the east, but it's coming both ways, and it's coming now.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need to know what's going on now.
Yeah, all those in favor?
7 in favor.
Is there any other business?
Just note, I may have to miss the workshop due to a family commitment.
Recording of it, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and please do listen to the recording or video. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
Max, thank you again for your good work in putting all this together.
Right.
You know, it's harder to, I was thinking about how it's harder to develop